This is A Line Around Your Thoughts, a podcast that centers on conversations with artists, writers, and creatives from around the Inland Northwest. I'm EJ Iannelli, and my guests in the Rogue Heart Media studio for this episode are Troy Nickerson and Chris Jensen, and they're here representing theater on the Verge. So welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So a quick recap, I think, is in order for folks who aren't familiar with Theater on the Verge, because you've had an inaugural production, but not everybody might have heard about that. So a quick rundown of Theater on the Verge, which we've already discussed in other conversations,
right.
But yeah, it might be helpful.
Right. Well, we formed this theater company in the fall of 2024, just a few months ago. And we just closed our first production called Every Brilliant Thing. And it was a one-man show. We did it at Hamilton Studio. And I'm proud to say it went very well.
Yeah. We sold out the run pretty early on, and then we added a extra weekend of 2 shows and sold those well. And so it was a pretty good first time out. We learned a lot. We had a lot of great feedback and a lot of support from the community. It was awesome.
We're glad we started small.
I was going to say, so what are some of the lessons learned from that?
Oof.
Well, I mean, one of them is that we started with a one-man show, which I think was smart in retrospect. And I think we knew that, right?
Yes.
And we didn't really have a whole lot of choice. We couldn't start with a 20 person, show. We didn't have the budget for that. And so we did what we were capable of doing in terms of budget, and we picked a good actor for it. That was smart.
It was kind of amazing that most everything most everything went well. I mean, it was kind of surprising. It really went really very well. Yeah. It didn't stop us from making mistakes after it closed, right. but that process went really well. We had a great rehearsal time, and it was a fantastic experience. I mean, I can't say anything bad about it. Nothing really happened that was a hard learning experience. Really, it was pretty great. But again, we kept it within our means, and that was a very wise decision.
Yeah, and start small and then expand. I think it started with a 6 performance run. Is that right?
That's
yes.
correct.
Yeah. And I know that we spoke ahead of the run, and you had certain expectations of what you wanted from this. Were those expectations met? For example, with this production alone, there was some fourth wall breaking, and you were wondering how the audience was going to respond. I think some early indications were that it was good. Did the audience respond in the way that you were hoping?
Well, I got to tell you, in the very first performance, there was a terrifying moment, because the very first person that Doug brought up onto the stage.
In the very first show. So really, it was the first time outside of our rehearsals.
Okay.
It wasn't Chris.
There's this, right. There's this moment where Doug, our actor, brought this person onto the stage to play a veterinarian he's playing a vet who's putting the
7-year-old boy's dog down.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's this very tender, very, very vulnerable moment. And
he gets a pencil or something for the audience, and has him to eject the dog, and
it's this really, really. I mean, it's a bit of a high wire act, right, in this moment, and this person from the audience used the pencil/needle to shoot himself up.
Oh wow! Okay.
To shooting himself up.
Right.
Yeah. Like it just went sideways.
Yeah.
And
Dougie just kind of looked out, and we were all just kind of stunned for a moment.
Is this the way it's going to be? Like, I mean, it just went completely off the rails,
But that was the improv element, and that introduces this uncertainty. And with live performance, you've always got an element of uncertainty.
Right.
But with this,
it was crazy.
So how did Doug roll with that? Did he just say, hey,
he just kind of did. He kind of turned it, because the guy kind of turned around, and he just kind of grabbed him and refocused him. And the lines after that are kind of like, hey, let's take this seriously, and no laughing and stuff. So he kind of got it back on. But it was bizarre, especially the first person up. So I'm sure he was pretty.
It really unsettled me for sure. But then after that, I don't know.
There wasn't. It was beautiful. I mean, it was such a pleasure to go to every night, because every night was so different, and every audience received it differently, and the people that went up there were all pretty great, you know. I mean, nobody refused. Even the person that, you know, takes off a sock and shoe and does a sock puppet. It never did not happen. And people were so like in tune with it and so kind of courageous in getting up there. And
Absolutely.
it was
one moment
special. It really was something.
There's one moment in the play where he brings up the guy who the person from the audience who plays his dad and has him do an impromptu wedding speech. Which is like, that's a lot.
That's a lot to ask of an audience member. Yeah, that's the sort of stuff that gives me nightmares.
I know, and it was something. It was this thing that kind of gave me nightmares of like, that is just. It almost felt to me like, is that cruel? Is that you know what I mean? Are we being? And but there was one night where this guy got up there and off the cuff gave a speech that had
the audience in tears. It was crazy.
I mean, we could not have written anything like that. And people asked a number of nights.
Most nights.
If we had plants in the audience. Like those, or they were sure that they were plants. Because so many of the people who were brought up on stage had such presence.
Yeah.
And and brought such a
honesty kind of thing to it, you know. It was it was
and
so
partly
cool.
too because Doug was so good at playing off of them.
That was the other thing, watching Doug from the first night to like just watching him with the audience. I mean, the first night it was still very like, oh God, hold on.
Yeah.
But as things went, he was genius. It was so masterful the way that he played and his ad libs, and it was cool. It was a lovely thing to watch. I don't know that we'll ever have that experience again.
So, you know, I mean, we say that we played it safe in a lot of ways in terms of the scale of the production, but that part of the production was not playing it safe at all. This is a one-person show that does not play it safe. Like,
the other thing,
you know,
I was thinking about as I'm laying sick and dying in bed was that
we both got sick at the end of the show.
To do this well and to sell out a show, first of all, a play. Is extraordinary, really. I mean, musicals tended to do that, and also to sell out a play that nobody had ever heard of.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty big.
And a play about suicide.
Yeah.
Right, but they have a lot of faith in both of you, and you especially, Troy, because you have creds in the theater community, and so I think some of that was people coming out because it was a Troy Nickerson and Chris Jensen production.
It was Troy,
I think that's true to a certain extent, but it was still just, you know,
And Doug has a good name too.
Doug has a great name too, and that was all. That all felt a little safer because of that. Right. But it was still genuinely sort of surprising. You know, a no-name play in Spokane, you know, doesn't necessarily, you know, do as well.
Yeah. And I'm proud to say that too, word of mouth was huge. Because we had a ton of tickets for our third weekend available, and they all went in the 48 hours after opening night. Okay. So that. And I
had numerous people there that brought people back a second time just because they wanted to share it with other people.
Yeah. So
it was
all
lovely.
of that was very special. Yeah. We just feel really grateful for all of that.
And were you in attendance? Were you both in attendance every single night?
Yes.
So I'm assuming on the early productions, you ended up seeing some familiar faces that were known to you that came out because you had happened to tell them. Was it those later productions where you started to see the unfamiliar faces?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I was taking tickets at the door,
and I was ushering some of the time. So we were kind of doing a little bit of everything. But especially the added weekend, there was so many. Different faces. There was a lot of the time, and people just walked up to us and just introduced themselves and thanked us. And you know, people that we don't know, just thanks for doing this.
There was somebody who read about what we were doing. He's from Seattle, and he drove over from Seattle and brought his sister who lives here to the show because he just was excited about. I don't know.
Yeah.
It
was lovely.
Yeah.
And how was Hamilton Studio as a venue? Because that's relatively untested. It's now known more for live music acts because Donna's incorporating a lot more of that. But how was it as a theatrical venue?
Don Hamilton and Lorna St. John were an absolute delight to work with. I don't know what to tell you. They were wonderful. Delightful.
And the space is for this show could not have been more fantastic. There's something about the space where, you know, they have it smoothed out so there's no corners, there's no seams to the walls. So it really has this beautiful sense of kind of floating, like, so it just was super simple lighting that Kim Roberts came in and did for us. But it was perfect. And the audience just loved the cabaret seating, for theater. They were very excited about that. There's, it's definitely like there's moments if you come down too far down stage, it's more difficult to see the actor.
Right.
You need to keep them up a little farther. People did kind of have to move chairs, and occasionally they were, kind of moving back and forth. But nobody complained about that. It was they accepted that when they sat down, and then it was just rolled from there. It was cool.
Yeah, the intimacy of the venue really seemed to match.
Just when we opened the door to people walk in, you could hear people kind of ooh and ah a little bit, because most of the people had never been to Hamilton Studio. Mm-hmm. Very different crowds. Yeah, it's funny how the music scene and the theater scene don't necessarily collide too much.
Well, is this then an opportunity to build relationships and create, some interdisciplinary contact where, hey, let's collaborate with this?
We've kind of talked a little about that. Yeah. We're not sure what it looks like yet, but there sure seems to be, a way to make that happen.
Yeah,
that's the stuff I find really exciting. Yeah. When it's nice to do pure theater and pure musicals and whatnot. But if there can be opportunities to kind of get outside that box, that's where some cool stuff can happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And hopefully that will.
Is that going to happen with the second production, which you've announced and then maybe rethought?
So this is the thing. One of the nice things about being an independent theater company is that when we've talked about this with you, is that we can be sort of nimble, and that we can, but we also sometimes, I think both of us, we like to have big ideas.
That is
and
true.
we like to think big. And sometimes I think in this particular case, we thought a little too big. And we got a little ahead of ourselves. And we've gotten a little ahead of ourselves at several points along the way, not quite so publicly as this. But and what happened was we announced our next show at our closing party, which we said was going to be American Idiot, which is a big musical.
Yeah,
it's a big rock opera. It's an amazing show. It's an angry show. It's a resonant show. It's a very
and it's also surprising because I thought Theater on the Verge was a way for you to extricate yourself a little bit from the
large musicals. Yeah. At least the large ones. Yes, all of those things are true. And again, we're still lessons learned.
So I think in the days after this, I think we were both kind of daring ourselves to do it almost a little bit, and neither of us was willing to admit that maybe we were both feeling a little uneasy about it. And in the days after the announcement, I think we both just came to the realization that we both just felt really unsettled. And I think the real issue, the real practical issue is that Troy's working on a show at Civic and was just feeling
back to back.
Really.
The passion for American Idiot was so strong, and it's just kind of stuff we want to say right now, the anger in it, all of that strong protesting quality that just feels like we want to dig in.
Right.
And then I just started to panic and not feel great, and we kind of both talked. I was like, "Yo, you too? Good."
It's like, wait a second, what are we doing to ourselves?
Yeah,
it's like, we want to make sure that whatever we do next is not gonna. Well, what our sort of joke was, killing Troy is not a great first year business plan. Like
we would be starting rehearsal the day after Waitress opens.
So let's not do something because honestly, like this first very small scale play. I mean, we both ended sick as dogs, right? Yeah. And it kind of wore us both out. So if that's going to do that to us, let's maybe be a little kinder to ourselves and maybe choose a second show that's going to maybe a little smaller scale.
Yeah.
More ambitious, sure.
And like we said, too, like that is out there, too. The musicals are kind of out there. And like I said, coming back to doing something smaller and simpler is good. We got caught up in that whole idea of this making this strong, statement, and then it was like, holy cow, that statement's going to be crazy.
And we'd much rather,
and
we'd much rather have a little egg on our face now, and and just retract it now a few days later, rather than after tickets go on sale, after we've made a casting announcement, all of that stuff. Like let's just
Yeah.
Let's just
and
walk
that's the
in.
beauty of what we're doing. We can, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not worried about, we haven't, like I said, sold tickets or anything. And
Yeah.
it's both of us were just, it felt like a weight lifted off of us.
Pure relief. And at that point, it's like,
I started to get healthy again.
Right. No. That's and at that point, it's like, oh no, then that's the right decision. And whatever people may think about it doesn't matter,
Right.
Because
Yeah.
we made the right decision for
Right.
us.
Right.
And we already have I think a pretty good beat on it. What I think the replacement is, that feels much more of a sane scale for considering what the time frame is between Waitress at Civic and what we would be doing next in late July at Hamilton Studio. So I think we've made a smart decision. Actually,
I
for
am
both
absolutely
of us.
positively.
Actually, no. Actually, I don't think. I know. We made a smart, insane decision.
That'll be on the back burner and hopefully can come to fruition someday, possibly.
Maybe.
Maybe. We'll see.
If
Yeah.
if the rights people will forgive us. But yeah.
Oh, you had already gone down the rights road.
Oh,
Yeah.
we had to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
So what is...
That's one of the lessons learned. That whole
Yeah.
that whole
of it.
moment.
All of it is.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
We're
Oh,
learning
yeah.
all kinds of things, and I think, and that's one of the things is, like I said, we have a pretty good idea of what we think we want to replace it with, but we've had this conversation like, let's take some days, to just like really reflect on that and make sure that we're putting our best foot forward and that we're making an announcement that we both feel really good about. And that we can really stand behind, and that we're not going to say.
And that's the good part about not being a big theater that has to deal with any of those things.
Right.
We can turn on a dime and do what we want. And not be stuck.
And take care of each other.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah,
because that's
truly.
really what that decision was.
Yes.
Was just saying like, wait, this
Mental
is
health
not,
and physical health.
right.
Yeah.
We need to take care of each other.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because if you were a big theater, a brick and mortar, this is something that would have been decided probably a year, 2 years ago,
Right.
and then that ball would have already been rolling.
Yeah.
So
You're stuck.
Yeah, the fact
Or
that
they
you
just
can
throw
walk it
somebody
back.
else in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes. So.
So what ideas are you floating without obviously wanting to hold you to anything? What ideas are you kind of tossing around for this second production?
We have a list of different things.
I don't want to talk about specific titles just because
Right.
because I don't want to
I think also maybe the opposite sometime of raging or having that thing is possibly supplying something that can also bring the opposite of that, and maybe something funny.
Yeah.
Maybe something that can bring people together and laugh for a long time, or possibilities of that. There's a few plays that we already are looking at. Chris has one that's really good that we're holding on to.
There's a play that I absolutely love. That it's a two-hander that feels to me like it is just so for this moment. That I think is maybe for like this fall or next winter.
Mm-hmm.
That
And I think we just have to remember maybe this is our niche. Maybe this is where we're at, right? Like and it just because, like I said, I do the big musicals doesn't mean I should, and yet my mind keeps wandering that way. But we sold out a one-man play.
Right.
Yeah, and I want to get to what you have to say, Chris, but I also wonder, do you feel pressured? Was the leap to American Idiot after doing the one-man play? Was the leap to American Idiot some even internal pressure? People expect musicals of Troy Nickerson. I'm going to go out and give them the musical that seems appropriate for this time.
I think there absolutely was some of that without me even really knowing it or acknowledging it, and it was just there for me. And it's there for me because sometimes it's like, oh, what can I do for this theater that's going to make money, that's going to do this, it's going to give all these parts to all these young actors, all this talent that's out there. And so, I think I kind of got really carried away with that. And then both of us also liked the message and got ahead of ourselves. Once again, I think we had the same conversation with you kind of the last time we talked.
Yeah.
We were doing the same thing about, trying to get together a season that we weren't going to do, so it's all. And even as well as it all went, we learned. It's hard to pinpoint what we learned other than oh my gosh, everything. You know, we have to have a rehearsal space. We have to have props that live in our car for.
Oh yeah.
You know,
in our closets.
You know, we're carrying props and boxes and everything. You know, because it's all us, and he has bands in there, so it doesn't live in the space. We got to take it with us. So
right, whatever set we create needs to be able to be struck between performances.
Yeah.
Right. So that whatever design we create needs to take that into account.
So American Idiot is off the table for anybody that wants to take on the challenge. American Idiot. It's a beautiful, fantastic show.
It's an amazing show.
Oh Lord, yes it is.
And Chris, did you want to make an additional point, or was the sets your additional point?
No, I think that. Oh, who knows? Can't even
I just have a little note sheet that keeps down all the.
That's just why I have checklists, because once it's gone. Yeah.
But are you also eyeing Hamilton Studio for your second production, or are you also looking around? Because I think one of the ways that I had described you as a floating theater company, because you really are open to any venue that will suit the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Pop-up theater.
Pop-up.
And I like that. But one of the things that we just have really enjoyed that collaboration with Hamilton Studio, and so I think the next show, we're looking at doing there, and we'll keep assessing that.
As we got farther along too, it's a lot to remember going into spaces. Okay, do they have lighting?
Yeah.
Right. Do we have to rent lighting trees? Do we have to rent sound equipment? Do we have to rent lights? All of those things are like, oh.
Well, and one of the things that's so valuable about what that we've found is that, for example, Don Hamilton has a background in theatrical lighting. Mm. He started off working at a theater in the Central Coast of California, and a lot of people maybe don't know that about him. Before, he was a photographer, and so he just gets it. We don't have to explain to him what a tech rehearsal is, and whereas when we've talked to maybe some other venues, there's some of that education that has to happen, and a little bit of the fear that comes.
You look at it and say, "Well, we need 2 tech rehearsals before we open," and it's like, "Huh?"
Yeah.
Well, we have, So we definitely are going to travel. I mean, we're definitely going to use other spaces and other venues. I would love to even find like a cool loft or something downtown, and that's not being used, and do something cool.
Absolutely.
Something like that for sure. I mean, there's anybody that wants to reach out to us with a cool space that they think could do something, man, let us know, because I still love that idea. It just felt, again, for us right now, to stay there would be a good safe.
There's so much that is already set up,
and
we don't have to bring in a whole bunch of stuff to make it work.
So, we don't want to settle there either, and make that like it's our home. There's we don't have that danger either. We really want to be more mobile than that.
Right.
And I hate to inject boring practicality into this, but I'm interested in the economics of it.
Yeah.
How much of this, when you talk about lighting, when you talk about the people that you have to pay in order to remunerate them appropriately for productions like this, was a lot of this self-funded? Did you get grant money? Was it all funded through ticket sales?
It was all funded through us.
So the initial money was just through savings.
Yeah.
And then we reimbursed ourselves through ticket sales. And then the folks who helped us, everybody involved with the show, with this first show, made the same amount of money. And it was just a flat rate. Everybody made the same amount. And in this case,
And we definitely have the money to really be successfully on our next adventure. We are definitely solid enough to at least get a really good start.
No. We have a nice little, and then partly because of that extra weekend we did. Really kind of, that's part of the reason why we decided to do that, because it would put us in a better cash position for the next show. But essentially, the way this is set up right now, this is not quit your job money. This is, to be clear, the economics of this. It is each show. The way at least I'm trying to set this up is that each show pays for the next one.
Right.
And that was part of my concern with American Idiot, is that I wasn't sure that it was going to work out. Also, just I wasn't sure the economics of that one were going to work out. I feel pretty confident that what we have in the bank right now is going to pay for the next one that we do have in mind, and that we're going to be pretty comfortably able to cover that, and also be able to pay the folks at least like a little bit who help us out. Certainly more than a lot of people get paid to do like theater around here. Mm-hmm. It's not quit your job money for any of us, for any of them. But it's at least like, thank you for showing up and helping us out money.
Yeah, and I think that financial dimension is really, really important, because when we look, if we pan back a little and we look at professional theater in Spokane, it has kind of a tumultuous legacy. I mean, I think Interplayers and the Modern were the last, quote, professional theaters in town that were doing, regular productions throughout the year. We have summer theater productions that are professional companies. But
I would consider all of those probably more in the regional theater category. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. Interplayers, I think, was probably professional at that time. I don't know that I think the Modern was always considered probably regional theater. Mm-hmm. But I guess technically...
Regional being community? Being another name for community?
There's kind of a step
like
between
hybrid.
The two.
Yeah.
Between community theater and professional theater. Although some people are of the mind that if you're paid for theater, it's professional, regardless mm-hmm. of what you're paid or what you do. But I could be wrong on that. But it's... I don't know. Professional theater, I consider it to be, I would consider it to be more of an equity house.
Yeah, for sure.
Which some of them are, but they would hire like one equity contract. It's not a full equity house.
Whereas ours, what we're doing might be considered more semi-professional. What sometimes is how it's termed.
Yeah,
if you're paid, but it's not equity.
Yeah.
I mean, we're an independent community theater that pays some people some money to play with us.
Exactly.
To hang out.
But if you work it out on an hourly basis, it's not so great.
It's not so great.
It's really, and that's the economics of it, because.
But it's nice too. It's not nothing. So
yeah.
And it's nice to reward the artists. I mean, and to whatever we can.
And
it's
just,
a great thing.
Exactly, and I gotta say, one person tore up the check and gave it back to us, which was just lovely. Yeah. Just to say, here, please, just, that's lovely.
Yeah.
And
there were just little gestures like that.
We did have some lovely donations from people at the crowds too that just wrote us checks.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. And it shows that people want us. People want us to be here. They want more theater. They want more art, especially right now.
Yeah. But that also highlights the difficulties with funding, because right now funding for arts organizations is fast vanishing and becoming a much more finite resource. And so, it's important to talk about the economics, because I'm someone who has, these romantic inclinations towards art for art's sake, but people also, need to put food on the table. They have to pay their mortgage and things like that.
It gives me, looking back at what we did too, also gives me a little bit of a different insight to some of the brick and mortar places too, and realizing what they do go through. That's been a good thing for me too. To know that, if you want to get a body mic, you can pay anywhere from $600 to $3,000 a piece. There's definite huge financial obligations to all of this that musicians, and it's big. It's it costs a lot of money, and I see this. I understand the struggles even more of some of these the theaters that are trying to make it right now.
Right, absolutely.
Well, so are you feeling pretty confident then for Theater on the Verge as an organization as you look ahead? We had talked earlier, and you had mentioned about the idea of a season and planning out a season. Is that still in the cards, or are things a little more nebulous now?
I mean, they're more nebulous than ever now. We're saying well, nope, sorry, just kidding. We're not.
Just kidding. Exactly. We should have shirts made that said "just kidding."
Just kidding. I think we want to remain. I think the fact that we were just able to say, you know what, we're changing our minds. We're going to do something a little more sane. I think that's a signal that we are not going to do things And
that takes a lot, right? It takes a lot to kind of stand up and go, oh, we kind of messed that up. We got ahead of ourselves. We need to back up and do what we can do and do it well. And because at first we were both like, oh God, we're going to look stupid. But I don't feel that at all anymore. I feel like it was just the right choice, and I don't think there's a stupid decision if it's the right one.
Right.
And one thing that I feel is that sometimes what I have seen in the past, and I won't name specific theaters, and I'm talking about theaters that used to be around, is that sometimes they tried to do too much. Mm-hmm. They would do so many things going on. And I don't want to be doing so many things. I want to do a few things and do them well. And choose
stay in our lane, figure out what we are and what we offer that's not being met elsewhere.
Right.
And that's tricky. Because I'm kind of meeting things elsewhere too, you know, so it's kind of, well, that maybe is where I do that. Or, you know.
Choose projects carefully, and sometimes we'll fall into ruts or fall into whatever, things that, you know, or fall into old habits or whatever, because we may maybe have been doing things other ways in other places and say like, oh, no, wait, that's the way things are done other places. And then we'll have to, you know, get back on our own track. Yeah. And that's okay. All of that's okay. We can make it up. We can make up our own rules. And that's kind of lovely. But we might just have to keep reminding ourselves of that.
And I think in some way for me as an artist, it's kind of like, I felt a little bit like, well, maybe the musical, I mean, they're doing this big musical. It's like, maybe that's, I'm not enough. I'm not, you know, like that's not, I'm not enough if I don't do something like that. That this, it doesn't feel like enough. I'm not going to, you know, and it's so silly because I mean, I'm definitely more than that, and I love that I have the capability of more than that. That I can do plays and I can do other things like that, and I do find so much joy in that, and so I just got to keep reminding myself of that. And it's so easy as artists to get trapped into, and I especially think with theaters, if you don't do something right away, you're going to be forgotten, and you're only as good as the last thing you did. You know, and it's easy to kind of fall into those traps and play those little mind games with yourself. And even with the success that I've had, it's still frightening. It's still a fear of failure. There's still all of those same things, you know, that happen to us as artists.
And I'm relieved to hear you say that, because it seems so much more human, because I think it's easy to be on one side of things and get a distorted view. And, you know, I've seen the successes that you've had throughout your career, and and the credibility that we talked about all the way at the beginning of the interview, where that credibility that you bring. But, you know, it is very human to concentrate on some of the negative. You know, the one critical comment that you got from your last production, that's the one that
you'll remember.
That you dwell on.
Yeah, I can remember the review that Tom Soa wrote about me when I played the lead in Guys and Dolls when I was 20. I think it was Troy Nickerson who plays the role of Sky Masterson, the swaggering whiskey drinker. But when Nickerson sings, it sounds more like ginger ale. Wow. I mean, I've had a million good reviews, not a million, but you know, I've had so many good reviews. I couldn't recite one of them, but that one, you know, I'll remember probably all my life. And we do that to ourselves as artists. You know, and I think people think for some reason that I'm above that or different than that in some way. But every show I do is terrifying. Like tonight, I start Waitress, and there's a part of me that does, do I remember how to do this? You know, and then you go in, and the first night, once the first night's over, you're like, okay, okay. But everything is still vulnerable and scary. You know, I mean, you're putting yourself on. You know, you're putting yourself out there with everything you do.
And I spent 10 years as a theater critic, you know, and it was something that I had to get out of it personally, because for me, it ended up not being a very healthy thing for me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For me, at least at that time, I just found that I had to get back on the other side of it personally. And there were other things going on for me that I had to adjust at the time. But I just found that I was becoming angrier and angrier. Yeah. And in fact, somebody wrote, when I was writing, this was when I was in San Francisco, I was writing for SF Weekly, and somebody wrote, my editor liked me because I got lots of letters, and he said that, which is, I was like, okay. And somebody wrote a letter and said, you know, I don't It said something to the effect of, I don't even think this had to do with the show. I think you're just angry. And it was right. I think he was right. And that was one of the last reviews I wrote.
Yeah.
Because it just felt like it kind of just cut right through me.
Yeah, because they got you.
It got me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long after that I moved back to Spokane and was in Equus.
Well, when you talk about it being, it felt unhealthy, I think the arts can be unhealthy. I mean, I think there's times where we drive ourselves to the point of, again, feeling like you're only as good as your last thing, or that people are going to forget who I am. People are going to, and I've heard so many actors say that, I'm not relevant. And it's like, it's Spokane, Washington, I mean, and yet it still is that real to every artist here. It doesn't matter that we're not in, some big metropolitan area. It's still, to those individuals, it still feels real. And it's as in the process of casting with Waitress, it's like, it's painful to cast a show.
Yeah.
When there's 85 people there and half of them are people that I love and care about, and the other half are in there talented and lovely, and you have to turn them and destroy their dreams. And I mean, it's and it's amazing the people that really do not understand that, like actors that don't understand that. You would think by now that you're doing this long enough that not getting cast isn't like this personal attack, but people can't help but feel that way. That it's a personal thing where it's not. And I mean, I've had numerous times where I've cast shows and went home and cried about it, just because I knew I was hurting people. Yeah. And it sucks.
Yeah, and I mean, if anything, I think this highlights how many more topics there are for us to explore in the future. Because I would love to talk criticism, theater criticism, and the role, the healthy role of that,
absolutely,
as well as the maybe more detrimental or more negatively perceived role. Sure, and then the behind the scenes casting process, because that was something that I learned in going and accompanying you on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, is just how many folks have to be shown the door even though you don't want to. And
because I had years where I did enjoy it, and where I do think I did some good work. But then at the end, near the end, I allowed it to make me smaller. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And there's also something happening right now too that's unusual for us, is that we have some critics here and there, but there's no real system in place for that. And I don't know how many actors are able to agree with that, but I think it's an important thing to have in our community, is to have critics and that are good, that know what they're doing and what they're talking about, because I think that's important to keep us alive, keep us fresh, keep us. You don't have to agree with it, but I think that is sort of missing from this whole equation right now.
Right. Yeah. And I think, EJ, you and I have talked about this, that I think sometimes there's this misperception among actors and directors that critics are writing for them, and I've always felt very strongly that critics. As a critic, I was writing for readers. Yeah. That was what I was doing.
And it's also that criticism has the connotation of being negative. And criticism, it's more analysis. And sometimes that analysis can take on a negative bent. And, critics are human too. And again, this is all, I think, fertile ground to explore in a future conversation, because I really think we could easily spend a good half hour.
For sure. And even as a director coming to that,
and I know you've got to head off to spearhead Waitress, but we do, just to close, have a quick lightning round of questions. And so this is somewhat related, somewhat unrelated. Okay. So burger or salad?
Tonight, a burger.
Burger, okay. Is there a musical or a play that you can think of that you just don't understand what all the fuss is about?
Ooh, Cats.
Oh. I'm not Cats. I mean, I know they did a beautiful job of it at Civic. It's not a musical thing to do, but it's just never been one that connected with me.
Yeah. Wow, that would be the first one that comes to mind as well. So I'm glad we're all in agreement. So favorite piece of entertainment that's not your own that you've experienced in the past couple of months? So that can be a live musical performance, that can be a television show.
I really enjoyed, there's been a couple things. I really enjoyed Cyclone that I saw the other day. It was lovely. And my friend Heather directed Lenny Soprano. That was very nice. And but Cyclone was crazy. And I love going into a musical, especially that I didn't know anything about it. It was great.
Just it's nice to be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I love that.
This movie came out, I think, 2 years ago. I just rewatched it though. Past Lives. It's a Celine song. She wrote and directed it. It was nominated for Best Picture, I think, a year or two ago. Absolutely phenomenal film.
Past Lives, huh?
I think I've watched it 3 times now.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's so simple. It's about a phenomenal movie.
And then last one, an album that was really pivotal during your teenage years, where you just wore the cassette out, where you just listened to it and it really spoke to you.
Jesus Christ Superstar.
Really? Okay.
The Brown album.
A chorus line. Oh yeah.
Rush 2112 was up there too.
Yeah,
that
man.
was
Up a steep and very narrow stairway.
Oh my gosh, I would not have guessed that one.
Well, that's fantastic, guys. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Really
been
appreciate it.
wonderful.
Yeah.